All right, let's jump right in. Today we're digging into a concept that hits close to home for, well, pretty much everyone: constant change. The whole idea here is that in a world that's always shifting under our feet, there might just be one thing that stays completely, absolutely the same. So let's get into it.
So, to get us started, the material we're looking at paints this really vivid picture. It asks, is life kind of like a roller coaster? You know the feeling, right? Those incredible highs where you feel like you're on top of the world, and then those stomach-lurching drops that come out of nowhere. One minute, everything's great. The next, it's all upside down.
And it's just so true, isn't it? Life is always in motion. Sometimes it's a big, sudden thing, a tragedy, losing a job, getting some tough news from the doctor. Or, one day someone is a huge part of your life and then they're not. This feeling of everything being so uncertain, that's something we all have to deal with. Okay, so with all that chaos and change, the big question is, what if there was something that could act like an anchor? That's the argument we're diving into now. The idea is that while everything else is shifting and changing, there's one core truth that never, ever moves. Let's take a look at what that is.
And here we have it. This is the central verse, the bedrock of this entire idea. It's so simple, but it's incredibly profound. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. The point is, he doesn't change. Not in the past, not now, not in the future. He's presented as this one single point of stability in a world that just won't stop spinning. And this isn't just a one-off idea, it's backed up in other places. You see it here in Malachi, where it says, "For I, the Lord, do not change." And then again in James, where God is described as the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. The key takeaway here is that this constancy isn't just a mood, it's presented as a core part of God's actual nature. Okay, so let's follow that logic for a second. If God is unchanging, then it makes sense that his most important message, the message of salvation, would have to be unchanging too, right? So now we're going to see how this idea flows from an unchanging God to what's called an unchanging gospel.
So what is this original unchanging message? Well, it's called the gospel of the kingdom, and it's described really simply as a gift of eternal life. The only condition to get it? Believing that what Jesus did on the cross is enough, that it's completely sufficient for salvation. That's it. Nothing more to add, nothing to take away.
And if you look at the book of Romans, it boils it down to a pretty straightforward two-step process. First, there's the outward part. You confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Then there's the inward part. You believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. According to this text, that's the path. Simple as that. Okay, but this is where things get, well, complicated. The argument being made is that we humans have this habit. We take this simple, unchanging message and we tweak it. We adapt it. We create these gospels made to measure, kind of custom fitting them to what we want or what we think we need. And it's really interesting to see how these different versions get broken down. The source identifies four main types. You've got the liberation gospel, which is all about freeing people from social and political oppression. Then there's the prosperity gospel, the idea that faith leads to financial blessings and good health. You also have the social gospel, focused on serving the community, things like food banks. And finally, the light gospel, which focuses a lot on God's love, but tends to skip over the tougher parts like sin and commitment. Let's just zoom in on one of these for a second to see what we're talking about. Look at the prosperity gospel versus the original gospel. It's a huge contrast, right? One side is saying your faith will make you rich. The other side is asking this really sharp question from the book of Mark: what good is it to gain the whole world but lose your own soul? You can really see how their core purposes are just worlds apart. And that brings us to a really critical point. Because while some of these adapted versions might sound, a little easier or more appealing to us, the original gospel is presented as something else entirely. It's demanding, really demanding. I mean, just listen to this quote from Luke. It really hammers the point home. "Any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple." Wow, that's pretty uncompromising. The idea here is that this isn't about partial credit. It's not about giving a little bit. It's about giving everything. So, as we start to bring this all together, we're left with two big ideas. On one hand, you have a really stern warning about changing the message, and on the other, a powerful promise about what that message is really for. And the warning is intense. In Galatians, it basically says that if anyone, and it literally says, even an angel from heaven, preaches a different gospel, they should be accursed.
I mean, that really shows you how seriously any change to this original message is supposed to be taken.
But it's not all warnings. There's also the promise. The argument kind of lands on this verse from Romans. It frames the gospel not just as a nice idea or a set of rules, but as the power of God for salvation. So its real purpose isn't about getting rich or even about social programs. It's about the complete transformation of a person's life.
So, what's the bottom line here? It all boils down to this idea of a total exchange. The argument is that God gave everything, his son, for us, and in return the expectation is that we give everything back to him. It's presented as a complete all-or-nothing kind of deal. And that brings us right back to where we started. We have this final thought to chew on. In a world that never stops changing, that really does feel like a roller coaster, what does it actually mean to anchor yourself to something that is, by its very nature, completely unchangeable? That's a big question. Thanks for sticking with me through this explainer.